So help me out.
All right, we're rolling.
Oh, we are.
Al Cross. It's June 2013, and I guess we should just dive in with some questions, which I have here. Get you started talking about good old Joe Morello, who you studied with in, when was that? First
2000.
of all, 2000. You went down from Toronto.
Yep, for a couple of years, kind of every 6 weeks. Thanks to the Canada Council of the Arts.
For 6 weeks total.
No, I would go down for a kind of a 2-day period. I would take a lesson, sleep over in Manhattan, and come back the next day.
Okay.
And that routine was a couple of years starting in 2000.
Holy smokes.
So late in life. But what I was saying was that, in answer to your question, Joe Morello was kind of definitely one of my early inspirations.
Yeah.
Because Mom and Dad had what every Telefunken stereo system had, which was a Dave Brubeck time out, time further out, those records. So that was a sound that I had in my head.
From when you were a kid?
From when I was a kid.
Wow.
And then I was reading Modern Drummer magazine, and I saw Joe's ad in the back, and got inspired to call. I made a phone call, got a guy that kind of screen calls, spoke to him twice. During the second phone call, he said, "You know what, just call Joe's house." Gave me Joe's number, spoke to Jean, his lovely wife. It was fantastic. Then I started going down, and it was, it brings tears to my eyes to think about it. It was very, very moving. Brilliant man, big heart. Very, very.
You guys, you became real good friends.
Yeah, I felt a lot of love from Joe and for him.
Right.
I think he had that effect. He dealt in that way with just about everybody.
Was he blind?
He was virtually blind, but I kind of tested him sometimes, just to see, like, can you see my hands, or,
right.
And he was able to see enough, and sometimes he would move in certain ways. So it worked. He wasn't 100% visually impaired.
Right, but this is getting to the end of his life.
This was, yeah, well, he died. I mean, this was 10 years before he died.
Right, oh, 10 years, okay.
He was great, he was fine.
So, in terms of principles, what kind of principles did he impart to you, and how did, I mean, you've already touched on what kind of effect the friendship had on your life.
Yeah.
I know it was a really big deal.
Yeah, and what I would say, I wrote down some of the principles that Joe imparted to me on my practice pad that I unfortunately can never throw out, because I guess I could take the head off and put it up on the wall.
On your practice pad?
Yeah, this nice practice pad that uses a real drum head, so it's kind of a cool surface. Joe turned me on to that particular pad. So I just took to writing some of his principles. And so they're kind of in my head.
What kind of stuff?
Oh, very simple. Hear the wood, okay? So hearing the wood, for anybody who doesn't know, if you grab 2 drumsticks and you're holding them tight and you click them together like claves, or just clicking the sticks together, and you're holding tight, you'll hear one sound. Then, and you should do that, so you click them together, click, 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 then loosen up to the point where if you loosened up anymore, you'd actually drop the stick. So as loose as you can be without dropping the stick, then click the sticks together, and you'll hear a much bigger sound, okay? And that's hearing the wood, because you're allowing more of the frequencies to vibrate, because you're not dampening the wood. So Joe's sound would start, he would allow for maximum vibration, basically.
Right. Where did he learn that?
He learned that from, I mean, that's well documented, but from a combination of George Lawrence Stone, Billy Gladstone.
The great teachers.
The absolute great teachers. And Joe, I always considered to be in that lineage of master teachers,
Yeah.
Very, very giving person, so a lot of respect there. So I learned to hear the wood. Another one of his principles was let the stick do as much, like, get out of the stick's way. That's how we put it. Get out of the stick's way. Allow for the rebound. So again, you're holding the stick loosely. And so some of the stuff I do now for playing is because you forget sometimes. So I actually try to remind myself, part of what I do when I practice and play is experiment with how loosely can I actually hold the sticks? How much can I let the bounce and flowing with that bounce be part of what I'm doing? And it's always a pleasant surprise how much that can really happen.
Isn't it
It's pretty
amazing? Yeah, how basically the older you get, the more you start to honor Mother Nature and the kind of physics that are
Yeah.
involved, and you just start to move
Yeah,
with.
and then it really, because this goes lines up nicely with another one of my principles, or principles that I've discovered, I guess, not so much through Joe, but is stepping out of the self and watching in a sort of objective way and listening in an objective way, almost like the way you would listen to a record, or a CD on. You're listening to music at a concert, you're in the audience. So I love to play in that mindset. I'm at the drums, I'm on stage, in the studio, whatever it might be, but I'm listening as if I'm not playing the drum, as if I'm not controlling the instrument.
Yeah.
So I'm being triggered by the music I'm hearing. I'm relaxed because I'm just listening to music and enjoying it. And I'm also combining that with kind of ingrained natural default way of being very loose with the stick that I did learn from Joe.
So it all ties together.
It all ties together.
Right. Next question. What is your philosophy on feel, supporting the song, and listening to those around you? Wow, so we're actually just talking about that. It's all ties. It's all the same stuff. It all ties together.
It is all the same stuff, but okay, so
Feel's a bit of a deeper issue, I guess. Feel.
Yeah,
Feels.
these things for me. I mean, it's ongoing. First of all, I may say one thing now, and God willing, another thing 10 years from now, which might be But no, basically for me, it's two areas that meet to allow me to play with feel in a band with other people, of course, right? So what that is listening to the singer, any lead instrument, listening to all the instruments. Really, actually, I got this from Jim Blackley. I love this phrase: listening to every note.
Why wouldn't you just hone in on like the bassist and only the bassist?
Okay, good question. If it was just the bassist playing and me, then that's what I would do. But if there's anybody else playing, then I'm listening to every single note of every person. Yeah, I can move around. I can move my sort of main focus from my kick drum to my right hand to the bass player. I can move around. That's a good thing to be able to do. But I mean, specifically, honestly, if there's a solo happening, I pay attention to every single note of that solo. What I play is a result of, it just feels like I end up doing better stuff when I'm paying attention to what the soloist is doing, or the singer, where the singer is putting the time. So that's one ballpark. The other ballpark is bringing to the table your own sense of time and feel. So all those hours of practice and experience, you have a sense of where it is, where the time is, and you bring that to the table with a confidence and a joy and a gratitude, and you're intertwining that with getting it from the other people too. So I marry both of those. Sometimes you need to do more of one or the other, I suppose.
If you were to measure your career's breadth of scope, what are the experiences that have informed your sensibilities as a musician and human being, and why do those experiences stand out? We're talking about formative experiences, playing with maybe you could talk about playing with really strong leaders. This ties into our last question.
Okay.
The answer you just provided there.
Yeah, okay. So, in my experience, initially I started off with high school friends in a band in the basement.
In Montreal.
In Montreal.
Yeah.
No real leader, just guys hanging out, new instruments or old instruments that whatever. So no leader. Then we started to gig, still kind of just a band vibe, we're all sharing it. But as the career starts to take off and you're making some real money, you're going to, for me anyway, I ended up working with what I call strong leaders, people with a strong musical vision. For example, Jane Siberry in the 80s, okay, that's pretty much took a lot of my time up there. Jane always had a real clear vision which I even tested. I remember she used to work with odd time signatures to the point where she'd snip off a 16th note, you know, like the smallest sliver of music, and say, you know what, she wouldn't be able to articulate it, but she knew that she needed that from the phrase taken out or added or whatever. And I remember testing her on that and realizing that she knew exactly what she was talking about.
Right.
She just didn't have the language for it. So, we were talking about formative stuff. Yeah, working with strong leaders, trying to understand and serve that vision, so you end up assimilating these approaches and going from, say, Jane Siberry then to Big Sugar in the 90s. I'm able to take, you know, the past experience, add it to the present experience. So it becomes an additive process. In the 2000s, I've been working a lot with Prakash John and Jordan. And Prakash is another strong leader. So same with Gordy Johnson and Big Sugar. So these people all have, for good reason, you know, very talented, wonderful people have.
But they know what they wanted.
They know what they want. They have
Yeah.
strong ideas. So you know, you work with that, and it ends up adding to your palette of possibilities and helps form your path through your aesthetic choices in music.
And what about handling the demands of these types of musicians or individuals whose values in the music didn't really jive with your own? I mean, was there a way of, did that kind of get you into a trouble area or problem area at all, or is it all? It was probably all helpful in the end.
Okay, well, you know, the answer there is, for me, that's where I would have to say any of these, that question is just like any sort of life question. That question could apply to any situation. If you're in a relationship, you know, some kind of romantic relationship, whatever, another, you know, that's not happening. Anything that's not happening, you know, there's certain things you would do. You kind of look at yourself. Is it, you know, what is it in me that I maybe can change to make this happen, or not? You know, so you have to use your sword of discrimination,
Right.
of wisdom, to cut through and you know.
But most of the time, you're in situations, looking back, in the past, with these people where you're happy to perform this supportive role.
Yeah, because it's actually just pretty darn good, honestly.
Yeah,
It's just good. The Jane Siberry band was good. Big Sugar, all that stuff was good.
You balance what's needed for the song with bringing a very intense playing presence to the song. You can disappear, be felt, and also be explicitly heard and in the song's face. What are the sorts of things that grab you when you listen to other drummers?
Okay.
We were just talking about Charlie Watts.
Yeah, well, okay, so when I was in Montreal, growing up and playing in Montreal, popular music, when I would play a wedding gig in Montreal, we would play Latin rhythms and jazz tunes. We didn't play North American pop music, and that was popular music in Quebec, was jazz and Latin, and that's what we all listened to.
So sorry, this is mid-50s?
No, not quite that far.
Early 60s?
No, this would be like high school. I graduated from grade 11 in 1969 or
Gotcha.
70.
Okay.
So I was playing gigs at that point. If I was at a wedding, we'd play jazz and Latin. We didn't play North American popular music. So, and that's what we all listened to. So, for example, in jazz music, Tony Williams, huge, wide palette of dynamic possibilities and active playing versus playing with space. Very wide palette of all that. So Art Blakey, same kind of thing. Very forceful, can be spacious or dense. So I personally think that that's part of my background. And when I came to Toronto, it was a matter of trying to figure out a little bit more of a kind of commercial North American approach to certain things.
Right.
But something I think I retained just kind of naturally, not with you know, is a certain wide, at times bombastic acceptance, you know, of what you were saying there. You know, where I can be very present or supportive. I don't know. I felt that was a bit rambly, but.
Well, no, but basically, I think what you're saying is just that you can't outsmart your own experience.
You know what I'm saying? Basically, yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. And I'm also saying that I kind of came from a jazz background,
Yeah.
and I applied that to pop music or blues or straight ahead for roots music. So I've always got a bit of that kind of jazz sensibility, you
Yeah,
know?
and that's really, I think when the people that I know, we think about how Cross is playing, you're playing, we can detect the jazz roots,
Yeah, and
and
you know
that
what?
sensibility.
The
It's
real
very
truth
evident.
is, I went from the last rock music I was really listening to was Cream. So I loved Ginger Baker, and then I heard Art Blakey. This is one of my big life-changing moments, actually, where I'll make it quick. I think I've told you this story, but I didn't know who I was going to see. I was going to go see some live music at an outdoor concert. It was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Curtis Fuller. It was an incredible band, Cedar Walton. But I didn't know who it was. It was just a drummer and his band. Outdoor concert. The stage was covered. Lots of people there. And we're kids from high school up front waiting. And then suddenly a storm appears and the heavens open and it started to pour rain, cats, and dogs, and everybody left. The whole audience left because it was just crazy. And Art Blakey looked down and he saw maybe 20 high school kids, people, and he looked down at us and he said, "Hey, come up on stage. It's dry." And so
How
we,
old was he then?
that was 1969. Okay,
69, okay.
so
So he brought you on stage.
he brought us on stage. He didn't say to his band, "Show's over. It's a rain cancellation. Let's go back to the hotel." He looked at these little group of kids get up on stage. I stood beside Art Blakey, and they played for an hour and a half. True story.
Sometimes those are the best gigs,
The
even
next
for,
day, and I'd been listening to Ginger Baker and Joe Morello, etc. But that changed my life
right.
entirely. The next day, I went to my local suburban mall, and they had Free for All, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messenger. Free for All, still kind of my favorite album of all time.
Oh my
I
God.
picked it out of the rack and went, okay, good, they got an Art Blakey album. And so it was a combination of Ginger Baker, Art Blakey, and Joe Morello, whatever. But, so that fills it out a little bit, I guess, right?
Next question. You play from the bottom up with the kick as your foundation in the time. Describe to me how you relate to the kit from your body.
Okay, so yeah, there's something I've been figuring out. I used to hear the old guys talk about playing and thinking of it coming from your bass drum.
It's like a New Orleans thing.
I, I just think somehow, not so much the part. I get, yeah, New Orleans guys would say that, I suppose. And for me, it just meant like, it kind of was as simple as this. Like a lot of drum lessons in the early days would be practice pad, rudimental kind of things. So all your thinking is in your hands. And it was never, there was very little discussion about somehow the foot. So there's all this development of the hands. And so when I was playing, and I think a lot of drummers, your kind of mental awareness is in the hands. So I've discovered through the years that if I'm going to have any awareness at all, I like it to be in my bass drum foot.
And how does that help the music?
Well, it's a little joke, but I say to people that my mother can play the bass drum. It's actually, often very simple,
Right.
or 1 and 3 or whatever. So it's a simple, low sound, and so it just seems to make sense. It's obviously a root. So what was your question exactly?
It was just about,
Well,
how do you relate to the drum set from your body? So for
Yeah.
you, it's bottom up.
Yeah, and in terms of body position, I don't have an option that way so
Right.
much. I can't really have a straight back anymore, but
I guess it's a question about feel,
yeah, feel.
and just
Okay,
how
so
you
yeah,
relate your own
yeah.
physical
So
technique to, the timbre of the kit.
yeah, so what I would say to anybody, if they don't, that I would say check out putting your brain into different areas. And you know what? Here's a little recommendation. The Gary Chester books, okay? What's that
New
book?
breed.
New Breed, and then New Breed 2.
Right.
So Gary Chester, I think one of his biggest gifts to us all was the concept of singing the click and then singing each individual limb, including whatever so-called melodic line was being played in his exercises. For me, the biggest thing was the concept of singing each limb, really doing that, not just figuring that you got the coordination, but when you sing the limb, like bass drum, it somehow puts your brain into that bass drum. After you've been singing the bass drum for 5 minutes and then you go to the left hand, you find that you can still hear the bass drum, but not so much in this linear, coordinated, puzzled piece way, but more like a choir. You hear the individual voice of the bass drum adding to in a harmonic way with the other voices of the drum kit. So what I discovered is it allowed me to move, like I was saying before, my consciousness kind of anywhere in the drum kit or on the bandstand. So what I've found is by having it down here, something so simple, my mom can do this. We can all just tap along.
Yeah.
So that's pretty solid.
And that relates to
And it's easy.
your ability to listen to everything that's going on. It's a totality. Yet another example of seeing the whole in what's happening moment to moment, right?
Yeah, and from an objective standpoint.
From that objective standpoint.
Removed, you know. Yeah, it's I think sometimes it's not the entire picture mentally of what's happening, but it's a good thing to be aware of and experience. And then you find what you can do in combination with that is often, not for all kinds of music, but music I play a lot, this happens to be true, you realize that you can A, relax your hands even more, and B, you can lighten the playing with the hands. If you need to get a nice accent, there are ways of snapping that out. But generally you can find that you can change the balance. A lot of drummers are a bit heavy in the hands and lighter in the foot, so it's nice to bring up the foot a bit and pull the hands back a little bit. And I like what that does.
Spoken like a true master.
Yeah.
What are your studio techniques and what modes of sensitivity and principles give you the most mileage in the studio? You're in the studio all the time, and it's kind of your natural habitat, and you've made most of your living there, and it's a part of the world that a lot of people just don't get to experience, and it's a very frustrating environment. So what kind of things what do you like about the studio?
I like that it's
such a general question, so broad.
Yeah. I mean, the studio is very focused. It usually sounds great. That's what's kind of the best thing. It's interesting. There are a lot of little issues. Headphones. Do you wear headphones? Okay.
What's your preference?
Well, sometimes we'll do sessions where nobody's got headphones on, it's live off the floor. That's kind of rare. Usually what happens in reality, you've got headphones on. I like my headphones to be pretty loud. I like the click to be very audible. Loud, strong. If we're using a click, I want to be able to hear it. I don't want to struggle to hear it.
Right.
Sometimes I'll experiment, depending on what I'm playing, with taking one ear off, because man, you can hear the subtleties of what you're doing. So hard, that I could talk for a long time on that one thing alone, but that's a good move to sometimes experiment with moving one ear so you can hear the drums naturally. So it's just a good little trick sometimes.
And what are the kinds of when you come out of a studio after a good day? Oh, hang on. We got the parties going by.
Only the adults.
There you go. So we got cut off there. So we were talking about
being in the studio.
Being in the studio, and when you come out of a studio and you feel good, usually if you can make a generalization there about why you would feel good, what are the kinds of experience that...
Sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
But I guess I'm time conscious, no pun intended. It's kind of two things. I happen to love the craft of playing the instrument in a way that's it could be a very commercial date, but even just doing the craft when there aren't that tremendous artistic decisions or cool creative things, I still enjoy the craft, the execution.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So that's the craft. Then there's the art. So they're different. It's a different combination depending on who you're working with, etc. Right? For me, I love it when it's a creative session. I love it when this may be You know, when very little is said, and that allows when very little direction is given, the result of that is each player just goes to what their instinct tells them to go to.
Right.
That allows them to play where they're probably most comfortable, you
Yeah.
know, or play what is most comfortable for them. And then you get a relaxed, loose feeling, and that always pretty much serves the music very well. And so I enjoy a creative, uh, more playing, less talking type of a situation.
How do you go about learning a song?
Okay, the joke there is that I don't.
Oh, I could have told you that.
Yes,
So
yes.
obvious.
But okay, in reality, if I really do have to learn something, uh, you know, I'll chart something out, right? Like in the studio, usually what happens is somebody's got a guitar and they say, it goes like this. I have a way of writing, I write out the bars. I have a system for making a quick one-time listen chart. So I'll do that if I have to learn something at home. I'll do the same kind of system. I kind of write the bars out, leave enough space to write whatever information I might need to put in about stops or shots or whatever, as much as I detest all that.
Would you agree that when you go on instinct that you're really just taking educated guesses based on all the music you've played in the past?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, improvising is something in those kind of situations that it just, would you agree that it just gets easier the further along you get?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely easier.
You know what to look for.
Yeah, it's more fun. Man, you know, I think one of the principles, like we were talking about Joe Morello principles, hear the wood, get out of the stick's way. Um, I don't think I said this phrase, but Joe would say, allow the stick to breathe. That was a key phrase, right? Same as getting out of the stick's way. But allowing the stick to breathe is a really nice way to put it. And what were we just talking
It all
about?
kind of ties into the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
basically we're talking about no ego.
Yeah.
You serve the song, and it's your
Yeah.
experience that allows you to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And
And that translates to the studio as well.
yeah, in the studio, it's just you can hear well. You can, you know, it just sounds great, and you're usually working with, even if you were, I mean, if it's your first time and it's people you don't know or something. I mean, the key is like anything in life is to relax. You know, all those basic principles. Count your blessings. You know, just say it's cool to be here, rather than focusing on the concerns, the anxiety, the negativity. Consciously take your thoughts, you know, cast aside those mental burdens, you
Yeah.
know, by replace. And how do you do that? You know, well, you replace them with positive thoughts. You know, like it's cool to be here. And speaking of that, speaking of anxiety and etc., which always gets in the way, a little technique I have in where a situation where you might become self-conscious or whatever is I actually, and it relates to what we've been saying, if I find myself having those feelings or thoughts, it definitely gets in the way and tightens me up. So a technique I have is to simply consciously really listen to the other people I'm playing with.
Which is active and not passive, right?
Yeah, active listening, and I count that as a blessing. Like I just
Yeah.
consciously think, this is cool, it is, this guy is great, you know.
And we were talking earlier about sort of rising to the occasion a little bit and just taking on the challenge when you're in those kinds of experiences. Can you just expand a little bit on that and how basically it always works out? Remember we were talking about that?
Yeah, yeah. When there are those gigs where they have to be good. You know, it's interesting stuff.
Like on TV or
like on TV.
you've opened for Aretha Franklin a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah. Ray Charles.
Played Massey Hall a bunch of times.
Yeah, Massey Hall a bunch of times. I think for Aretha. Twice. Once at Massey Hall, opening for Aretha with Molly Johnson and the earliest form of Big Sugar, and then once with Jordan, John, and Prakash and Michael Fonfair on organ, opening for Aretha. That was fairly recent. Ray Charles at a big venue, outdoor venue in Toronto, the Ontario Place Forum back in the day. And then other gigs. Okay, those are gigs that have to go well. But for example, say you're in a band like Jane Sibrey, first time in Los Angeles. You know, there's a lot of press. It's got to be good. Or in New York, it just simply has to be good. So definitely been in those situations quite a bit. And what I have found over the years is that they tend to work out.
Yeah.
So knowing that helps, right? Because you can be thinking, man, this has got to be good. So, you know, again, my technique is to just kind of sink into the music, into the, go be in the moment, listening to the other players, and appreciating all the good things in that moment. And then the result, it's kind of like good butterflies. I've heard people talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
They do help you concentrate. You know, be thankful, take some deep breaths, and be focused, and it will be a good gig, because those gigs often have a good audience too.
Right.
That's another factor.
They want to be there.
They want to be there,
Yeah.
and they help, So if you make yourself consciously become aware of that audience, I mean, it's quite a feeling to walk out to, a large crowd that really wants to hear some good music. There's nothing like, that's the job, to deliver the goods, right? It's a joyful situation.
Right.
Yeah, and you know what? We're just the conduit. So the energy there really is universal, if I may.
What is your attitude towards making mistakes in musical performance? This kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, practically speaking, I would say take note and carry on, or as my son has on his wall, keep calm and carry on, right?
Right.
Which is brilliant. And yeah, absolutely. And I, yeah, make
It's all
it.
part of the package, right? Mistakes, you need them.
Yeah, it's in. If there's a part or a stop or some part of the arrangement, I'm personally not a big fan of, I don't enjoy that so much, I've been there, done that, where you really get it tight, but you know what, it's a very good feeling to have a tight, then loose, tight and loose presentation of some music. Take some work. If you make a mistake on that journey of learning of getting the tightness happening, yeah, you just take note of it. So next time it comes up, you go, oh yeah, and be kind to yourself. No use in getting negative about it, but stay focused and take note of it and try not to repeat the mistake.
What kind of stylistic tendencies have purposefully disappeared from your playing? So how have you become more efficient in your technique and your styles of
Okay.
approaching the kit?
Okay.
What kind of changes have you made on purpose to your playing,
Okay, that's a
and
better
why?
question, but a more difficult one, I think, too.
Mm.
Um, you know, I guess it's a funny thing. One of the principles that you hear old guys always talk about is they learn about less is more. And that turns out to be true. So, for sure, I think it's quite common, myself, definitely. In the old days, I would have maybe I would have tended to put more notes into a space than I might now, although that's not something I eliminate, Uh, kind of your first form of that question, I haven't thrown out anything that I've kind of done, experienced, been into. It's all in my toolbox. It's all on my palette, right? So some of the stuff that I've added to that palette would be less is more, and that kind of thing. What's cool about less is more is that, like for example, I play with a lot of different bass players on a regular basis, and I have a fun thing that I can do where if I play very little, they end up playing a little more. And that allows them to, speak, tap into themselves a bit, and it kind of brings them more to the forefront, and that helps them feel good, I think. So it's kind of a nice trick a drummer can do, is to give space to the other people on the stand. And then, when it's all grooving, all is fair game.
What have been some of your favorite venues to play? What makes a particular gig stand out from the rest? We were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's kind of a tricky question because you played so often. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about playing 6 nights a week and what that was like.
Right. Sorry to say, but back in the day, yeah, we were looking at that question before running this tape here.
Yeah.
In terms of venues, yeah, and I was saying that it's funny. I mean, the Stones say, for example, that they loved playing the El Macombo. Whatever is the most intimate, I love it when I can. My favorite thing is to be able to lean on the bass amp. If I can physically touch the bass amp and lean on it that's my favorite thing. Or even sit on it, but not really. But I like to be able to touch the amps. I like to be the thing. Intimacy, hearing it clearly is the best.
What if you can't hear it? Then do you have any kind of strategies for knowing where you are in the time? Like, will you?
Okay, Dr. John said to Terry Wilkins once when they were playing at the Horseshoe, It's a great principle. If there's anybody on stage that you can't hear, you're playing too loud, you know? Not entirely 100% true, but good principle. In other words, you can it's good to reduce the volume and then go up from there once you can hear everybody. Then you can find out what depending on the stage and the environment, what the parameters really are for your dynamic range. So start low.
What do you listen for in other drummers?
I was just listening to Anthony Jackson talk about that. Did I get that right? What do I listen for in other drummers? I like to hear a joyful celebration in the groove, you know? So if you're in the pocket, I find you can play one note or 64 notes. If it's a natural outcome from this ballpark of groove, then that's what I like to hear. I like to hear that a confident, joyful expression coming from there. You know, I love a team player, and I like the craft too. So I love ability too, but I like it to be groovy and musical.
A few of our last questions. What are your limits as a drummer from moment to moment? When do you know to push, to pull back, and what pacing strategies, again, do you employ during demanding songs or situations? How do you keep yourself under control, breathing, you know, just that kind of stuff? Like,
okay, you don't mean in the time so much?
No, I do mean in the time.
Oh, okay, like
yeah.
So like to push the time or pull back?
Yeah, like how do you monitor yourself and what's going on and stay calm? And is it just a matter of breathing well or changing your technique up?
Well, in general, I don't think everybody would go for this, but I'm one of those guys that says, I think generally, if I'm relaxed, I'm going to get a better musical performance, right? And then so that comes a little bit like we talked about, listening objectively, just any kind of relaxing technique that you might do. It's not even a technique, I just kind of being in the moment is a way of relaxing. So there's that. Then also, in terms of the drum kit itself, another thing that's good about, like what we're talking about, of having the ability to move your mind or your focus from the one limb to another, kick drum to snare to right hand to left hand, you can have different time approaches on each limb. In reality, it'd be right hand too. So sometimes you might think kick drum right on, depending on the music, left hand backbeat can be a little bit back.
You have a little
you know,
air pocket behind the
yeah.
left stick sometimes.
My thing is, I don't know if this translates necessarily, but I call it like a ball of air. So it's like, imagine if there's a ball of air around the end of the stick in the left hand. So before the backbeat hits, it's like, you know, so there's just that breath.
Where did that come from? Where did you get that?
I don't know.
You just came up with it on your own.
I just came up with that. And it's an interesting thing because, you know, you record with a click, you can be right on. It doesn't sound, it's just an area, it's a level you have to work at it's beyond the ink, it's beyond the part. The snare can be on 2 and 4, but whether it's on the back or in the middle or the top of the beat is really what you should be dealing with. And you split the limbs too. To be honest, you can typically have the bass drum be nice and right on, and the snare drum can be a little back, you know? And then there's all sorts of other things involved with the right hand and different aspects there. One thing I love is what they talk about, Motown drummers back in the day used to talk about a choo-choo beat, which would be like, instead of 4/4 time in my mind, be like 8/8 time, where it's all eighth notes. This is happening a lot today again.
Yeah.
Like Chris Daddy Dave playing that style, or Questlove, where it's nice, all 8/8 notes in a standard beat would be even and like choo 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 choo.
Not accented.
Non-accented, and that it sounds like choo 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 choo. So that's a kind of time sensibility related to accents and non-accents.
Last question, can you just tell me real quick about what Gary Lowe imparted to you about, you know, playing one drop reggae?
Okay, so Gary, yeah, so another thing, God bless Gary Lowe.
How he, you know, where the hi-hat technique comes from and all that, the part and all that.
Okay, well, so Gary Lowe, I logged a lot of hours with Gary playing in Big Sugar, and we played kind of a Jamaican-informed rock and roll kind of music. So Gary was born and raised in Jamaica and came up, has some great ways of understanding. So I'll just say, for us, for me, up until the point of working with Gary, if I was playing a rock beat, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, it would be kind of like this, boom, ba. So I'm on the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. My head is moving this way. 2, 4. It's all downbeat, downbeat,
Yeah.
downbeat, downbeat. And that's fine, that's cool. It's important, I think, by the way, to have all these as possibilities, just a full awareness of all these different aspects. So this isn't the only way. It's good
Right.
to check it out. So downbeat, 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 downbeat. So Gary said to me, you know, because we're talking about tune 4, the backbeat, where you really put that. I like to put it just where the vocalist is singing and right in that, a sweet spot in relation to the vocal. Gary said he knows where the downbeat comes, backbeat, 2 and 4, from where the upbeat is. So he's thinking, if he's hearing 1, 2, 2, 2, he's thinking up, 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 upbeats, and the downbeat is a result of after the upbeat. So the downbeat becomes very easy to place if you're putting your consciousness, like this again relates to what we were talking about before. So rhythmically, you put your consciousness into the upbeats, the backbeats just fall beautifully into place because they just go between the upbeats. And the upbeats have this beautiful, you know, it all becomes very natural. It's a very cool way of hearing and playing music. Not the only way, but a nice way to know about it. So that was kind of marrying a reggae way of hearing with a rock way of hearing and playing.
And didn't he, you know?
Oh, the machete?
Yeah.
Okay, and the nature of those upbeats, they should be felt and played and heard, especially a guitar player. Is it called a skank, like that
Oh, I don't
upbeat
know.
rhythm? Check, check. That rhythm in a reggae, 1, ch, ch, cha, cha, cha. That upbeat. Gary said to me, okay, that's not this laid back kind of thing, drugged out thing. You have a machete. You're cutting a path through the jungle. He's had the experience. You got a nice sharp machete, and you go chop, 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 chop. So it's chop, chop, chop. It's very, very distinct. It's aggressive. It's sharp. It's clean. It's like cha, 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 and man, it just locks in, and so. Yeah, those are upbeats. Machete through the jungle, cutting a path through the jungle. And then where the backbeat goes, where your foot lands on the path, is you've made the upbeat with the machete, and boom, you step into place on the downbeat. And it's quite simple, really.
Al Cross, I want to thank you very much. It's been a great talk.
Thanks, Adam.